After the big failure that was the Wii U, Nintendo needed a new idea to really keep the reputation intact. They wanted something that would last the next decade like the Wii did. But then they looked at their watch and realized it was almost closing time for the day, and they said, you know what, just give them an iPad and some apple slices, they'll love it. Nintendo's biggest claim to fame is their ability to have some neat little gimmick in every console they put out. They always know how to think outside the box, but often sacrifice performance for doing so. The latest example of this is the Wii U, which had its whole gamepad thing, which was a huge success. The Wii had its motion controls, and the GameCube, well, it was the GameCube, that was special enough. You could build a house out of those things. The need for something special was really apparent after the Wii U failed in retail. They needed to make up for it. From the get-go, Nintendo couldn't shake the idea of a console that could be both a home console and something you could take with you on the go, like taking the Wii U gamepad and making it actually portable. Nintendo's goal has always been to, rather than compete with other brands, to be something unique, something in its own space. Sony and Microsoft are clearly competitors when it comes to gaming, but Nintendo more so focuses on tapping into new areas to specialize in. For the most part of the past decade, this has been handheld gaming. That way, there's next to no competition. As development continued, the idea of a home handheld hybrid continued, and the name Switch was pitched, for the ability to switch between both different ways of playing. Soon enough, the controllers needed to be thought out. The Wiimote was a big success. The gamepad wasn't, mainly because it became useless anyway as soon as it was moved away from the main system, but by combining the two... Now that's magic. Okay, but can I whine about these for a second? They aren't super uncomfortable, but I just always find myself wanting to use a Pro controller instead. That takes away the motion controls, but I don't really use those anyway. I use motion controls much more with the Wii. These new controllers are just a bit too small, and if I can, I'd rather have a more dated and unoriginal, boring, mild, passable controller than this wild card. But I've never been super picky about controllers anyway, so I can deal with it. The biggest complaint about the Switch now that it's out is that it's not the most powerful system out there, but at least this was intentional on Nintendo's part. They wanted to do this so they could focus more on the portability of the system. Once the device was in its first stages of development in March 2015, Nintendo announced it under the code name NX and said very little about it, but in the coming months, there would be supposed leaks that claimed the console would be meant for home and mobile use, have controllers that could attach to the main device, and that it would have games on both cartridges and digital downloads. Yeah, like that'll ever happen. Oh! On October 20th, 2016, the first trailer was revealed, the leaks were confirmed, and the community just kinda sorta exploded. More details would be revealed later on, and while people were skeptical, approval was really high. It was inevitably released on March 3rd, 2017 for $400 Canadian. I'd convert that to American for you, but everyone knows Americans don't actually matter, the rest of the world just likes to make them think they do. The price was relatively high, which was kinda risky for something so experimental, but sales exceeded expectations, and the console was a success nearly worldwide. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Let's take a look at the Switch itself. This is the main model, not any of the other versions released later on. It's got a well-sized screen, it doesn't feel too heavy, and it isn't too small either. I don't have to squint at anything to see it, and even if I did, that's what this is for. You can attach the Joy-Cons on the side, which apparently can be done wrong and damage them, but I've never noticed anything myself, and I always just slap these bad boys on anyway. The actual resolution of the screen in handheld mode is only 720p, which is not a big reason to complain, and I couldn't care less. I still consider that fairly high resolution, especially for a handheld. There's an audio jack, which is great because there's no Bluetooth capability for any wireless earbuds, at least not that Nintendo allows. There's also a depressing kickstand in the base model. I'm about to be the first person to ever use this thing. That is about what I expected. But under the kickstand is a much more useful SD card slot, which is a must for the system. The base model has only 32GB of storage, which isn't much at all. I now have 2 cards for the system, and I still feel like it's not enough. I don't think I buy many games, really, it's just that games take a lot of storage nowadays. Switching between different modes is seamless and works really well. Some games don't work well with handheld mode, even first-party ones, or just don't work at all, which is just strange considering that's what the console's all about, but whatever. In TV mode, the resolution is 1080p, which is nothing to complain about, and it runs the same as any other console, with minor performance differences. There are some games that can stutter, like this infamous part in Breath of the Wild, but other than that, it runs smoothly no matter where the console is.
Now, I mentioned the Joy-Cons briefly before, but I didn't get to the biggest reason why I don't like these. You all know what I'm gonna say. There's one reason we all hate these controllers.
The X button, am I right?
The controller drift. So, a lot has been said on this, so I won't dwell on it, but man, this is the big reason I use Pro controllers. I haven't had one that's had much controller drift. At worst, a little here and there, but with some I've never experienced it. I do like the potential of the Joy-Cons. I think Labo is cool, but that's a topic in and of itself. I just think they could have done so much better. I don't know if the Lite version, which is mostly a handheld console and has the Joy-Cons attached to the system, is any better, but I've never tried it. Here's the inside of my Switch. I don't have a capture card, so this is going to hurt my head real bad, but this is the menu. It's had some minor changes over time, but it's essentially the same as at release. Up to 8 profiles are allowed, and I made Eren Yeager. It's really easy to navigate this thing and get from your games to photo library to settings to the shop to anything else, really. Apparently the Switch was tested for VR capabilities, as a hacker found out. It's possible to switch the screen into 2, allowing for, both eyes, and possibly offering a VR experience, though this was never finished apart from Labo, sadly. I'm a huge fan of VR, so I hope Nintendo continues this in the future, maybe even with their next console, but I understand them being hesitant after the Virtual Boy. It's weird the things included with the Switch. Like, with previous systems, it includes an emulator to play old NES and SNES games through the Nintendo Online service, though I've never gotten it. It's pretty pricey for just getting online play and a handful of old games, most of which aren't even really that great nowadays. There are some available just on the eShop though, even some from the N64 days. And then there's these two, which I will not talk about because I refuse to. I'll talk more about the rest of this in the future. Somehow the Switch has YouTube, but still doesn't have Netflix or any other streaming services, save for anime options of course. The games library has a ton of good options, and the eShop is full of thousands of games, some of which are even good. With the fact that this is the only way to play new first-party Nintendo games, it's no surprise most people get this thing for the games it offers. You see, people don't get the Switch because it's the Switch. People get the Switch because you can play Breath of the Wild on it. Third-party support is also huge, since the lack of it is a big reason the Wii U failed. Also, the cartridges make a nice snack. I will say I wish that there were more games that were on a physical release for this system. There's just not very many. I mean, this is my whole physical game collection, and it just makes me sad. People were wary of this console at first, but it's got that familiar Nintendo charm and the ability to be played by anyone. It's not perfect by any means, and recent events have marred Nintendo's reputation a lot, but no console is, and this is one that's been a huge success, selling more than most other consoles under the brand. And most of all, it's fun. It really reminds me of a modern Wii. It's got a unique idea, and it's run with it, and even with a little bit less performance than other consoles at the time, it's worked.
I'm so proud to be a Nintendo fan.